Boy, do we have a good one for you today. Welcome to the Move the Chains podcast. I am your host, Jason Jacoby, along with Salt to Salt and Pepper. We
Salt
go
and
by Salt
pepper.
and Pepper a little bit. Mark
Yeah.
Boyer. Mark, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Super excited to have our guest Adam Johnson here with us, and it's going to be a good time together. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So Adam Johnson is the founder and author of bullseyebrief.com, a weekly investment letter which explores American ingenuity through actionable stock picks. He also manages the American Ingenuity portfolio at Kensington Investment Counsel. Previously, he anchored several daily programs at Bloomberg Television, interviewing CEOs, heads of state, and prominent investors. During his 3-decade career on Wall Street, which I can't believe it's been 3 decades, Adam, you look younger than
Thank
me.
you.
So he has traded stocks, options, and oil for ING Asset Management, Louis Dreyfus, and Merrill Lynch. He graduated from Princeton with a degree in economics, and he resides in the beautiful New York City and enjoys cooking, skiing, and shooting, which I want to talk about a little bit later.
Yeah.
Love a lot of those things there.
Oh, yeah.
But a brief backstory into Bullseye Brief before we kind of get into Adam and his story and how he's moved the chains. So Bullseye Brief, again, explores and invests in American ingenuity. I want to bring that home a little bit more. So, greatest country in the world, a lot of ingenuity and companies going on. So he manages a portfolio of 35 to 40 publicly traded U.S. equities with a significant runway for growth. These are dynamic U.S. companies propelling the world forward across multiple industries. So excited to dive into that. And some of these sectors of focus include energy, healthcare, industrials, and technology. New positions enter the fund based on individual merit, and each shares 3 defining attributes: great story, compelling data, and identifiable catalysts. Upside targets and downside alerts are determined in advance to manage risk reward. And since launching in 2016, the portfolio has significantly outperformed the S&P. So well done, Adam.
There you go.
We're excited to have you. Welcome, Adam Johnson.
All right.
Yeah.
Jason and Mark, thank you. Great to be with you.
Glad you're
Awesome.
here.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Now, want to kind of dive into your backstory a little bit. So you're in New York City now, but why don't you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and kind of your childhood and how you ended up at the wonderful school of Princeton?
Yeah, boy, what a wonderful place that was. So I was born in Chicago. My folks actually from Iowa. They were the first ones to ever leave the farm, and eventually Dad got transferred to New York. So I grew up in Connecticut. Was lucky enough to go down to Princeton, and the amazing thing about going to a place like Princeton is you end up meeting professors and people who change your life. And my Econ 101 prof is a guy named Alan Blinder, if that sounds familiar. He's the former vice chairman of the Federal Reserve. And one day after class, I went up to him and I asked him a question. And he said, "Remind me your name again." And I said, "Well, sir, it's Adam Johnson." He said, "Adam, what's your major?" I said, "Well, sir, I'm a pre-med, so it's probably going to be molecular biology." He said, "I think that's a bad idea."
Wow.
And I said, "Well, why?" He goes, "Well, you're the only one who comes up to me every day after class and asks questions. I think you like economics, and you should be an economics major." And you know what? It's funny because in that moment, it just totally changed. I said to him, "Well, it's interesting, Professor." I said, "The cool thing about economics is it gives you this language to understand how the world comes together and interacts." He goes, "That's what an economics major would say." So with that, I literally changed my mind, never looked back. And as an economics major, it was pretty logical to go to Wall Street and found myself trading oil, eventually trading stocks and options, and then going on as a guest on CNBC and Fox and Bloomberg, and eventually Bloomberg in about 2008, after I've been trading for 20 years, said, "Would you ever join us as a full-time TV person? Because the world's imploding." Again, 2008, 2009, it was crazy. And they needed people who could speak from experience. They didn't want journalists. They wanted people, who were actually in the trading, et cetera. And so I spent 5 years in front of a camera. I loved it, but I missed being in the business. So I launched Bullseye Brief. And out of Bullseye Brief, which is my investment letter, has come the money management business and the Bullseye American Ingenuity Fund. So it's been a long, wonderful, and circuitous ride, as life always is.
Yeah,
And I feel privileged to be here and talking with you guys and effectively running two businesses now.
that's amazing. So you said you went in as pre-med. How
Yeah.
so what was the thought process behind that? I mean, that's a seismic shift, but did you have a passion for that going in? You loved health
Yeah.
and fitness or health?
Well, it's funny how things work. When you find you're good at something, you tend to do it, and you enjoy it because you're good at it. And I had an aptitude for science as a kid, and I got straight A pluses in every science class I ever took until I got to Princeton. They were a little Uh, but yeah, I loved it, and it just seemed so obvious to me. And as a kid, I would volunteer at the local hospital, and I'd talk to nurses and doctors, and I don't know, it just felt right, and it felt right until my eyes were opened by a great professor who realized that there's not just one version of right. And so I think for me, economics and now markets. And running money and being in that flow, that is for me, I think, more right than being a doctor would have been. I think I'd have been a great doctor. I wanted to be a surgeon. I'm precise. I like using my hands. I mean, like we said, I like to cook, I like to paint. But
Yep.
I think I am probably better off being a portfolio manager than I am being a doctor, even though I think I would have enjoyed that too.
So how long did that take? So I mean, you made it sound like you made that decision pretty quickly, but was that hard? I mean, was
No.
that what it wasn't? It was super easy. You just were you next day you were going to economics.
Yeah, well, when something feels right, you know yourself. When you know who you are and you're comfortable in your own skin, I think it's easy to make decisions, or easier. And
Yeah.
the way he said it, it just seems so logical. And I thought, how could I go against that kind of logic? I mean, I literally,
Yeah.
as I walked down the stairs of Makash 103, the big lecture hall at Princeton, it was just crystal clear. And I came into, I mean, literally, and I didn't go into that economics class that day thinking, well, my life's about to change. But that sometimes that's the way life works.
Yeah. Happened
It's
that
in,
quick.
it's kind
Yeah.
of interesting. So you doctor, right? Helping people maybe more physically and internally, where now you're helping people in a different way. So you're still helping people, right? Through actionable insights and
Yeah.
you're helping people make money, learn, educate themselves about economics, how the world works, how it's all kind of comes together. So that's pretty fascinating, pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so. And people have asked me before, what was it about economics? That comment you made, well, economics gives you this language for understanding how the world comes together. Here's how I see it. And I had already formulated this at Princeton, but it didn't gel until that
Mhm.
comment from the professor, Alan Blinder. So there's a guy in Australia who raises sheep and then he shears the sheep. And that produces wool that another guy ships to a port, that another guy or gal puts into a ship and it's sent to
Mhm.
China. So still more people can turn that wool into yarn and then weave it into sweaters. And ultimately, that sweater gets put in yet another ship and sent to a
Mhm.
place like New York, where it ends up in a store. We'll call it Ralph Lauren, that is a publicly traded company, ticker RL. And then there are investors who consider buying that stock, and there are
Mm.
analysts who help you come to that decision. Well, think about all the different social, human, professional interactions that converted the wool in Australia to the sweater on Madison Avenue. And all that
Mm.
stuff, all
Yeah.
those millions of interactions over, a long period of time, months, etc., get distilled into a single thing called a stock price that back in the day was traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And of course, now it's traded, um, online.
Yeah.
And the distillation of all those processes to me is incredibly exciting. And the stock price is just the final distillation, that final point at the
Mhm.
bottom of a very long and complicated triangle. And I wanted to be at that point. I wanted to be at the
Mm.
tip of that pyramid. And so that's what ultimately took me to Wall Street. And for me, that was more exciting than repairing people's bodies. As wonderful
Yeah.
as that is, and as
Right.
essential as that is, it just, for me, the way I'm wired, I wanted to be at the tip of that point.
Interesting. So talk about your journey to New York City. So obviously it's the epicenter, financial epicenter of the world, in my opinion. But
Yeah,
had you been there prior to, like, during your coursework at Princeton? So you kind of already knew, hey, when I'm done, I'm going to go there. Sure, there were internships maybe along the way. So how was that transition? Was it a culture shock a little bit, or was it just smooth
no,
sailing?
no, and I'll tell you why. Because my dad was in advertising, and if you remember the show Mad Men, right? Remember that show, right?
Yep.
Well, that was my
Mhm.
dad. And it was a little crazy. He actually died
Wow.
at 48, heart attack,
I'm
because,
sorry to hear that.
the way those guys were portrayed in that show. I mean, that was kind of how my dad lived. And every Friday night, mom, this is back when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, and my sister was 2 years younger than I am. Um, Mom would get us all dolled up. I had to put on a blue blazer and a tie as a kid. And we go into my dad's office, this is the 70s, and we'd meet him. And then we'd all go out and do a family dinner, literally every Friday night. So,
Wow.
and and mom and dad would sit at the table and have a few cocktails for a few hours. I mean, it was the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a bad man,
Hmm. Yeah.
and an advertising guy. And so my point is that New York started to feel very comfortable at a very young age, and it never really occurred to me that I would do anything other than go to New York.
Mhm.
I mean, I assumed I would do med school somewhere, but it never occurred to me that I would live ultimately anywhere other than New York. And so, yeah, Princeton to New York was pretty obvious. I'm sitting in my New York apartment right now as we do the podcast, and I've been living on the Upper East Side ever since I graduated. So, maybe I'm a
That's
creature of
amazing.
habit. Maybe I just know what I like, but it feels pretty good.
So on your walk and talks in the morning that we see on LinkedIn, which I love, by the way.
Oh,
So
thank you.
how long is the journey to the office, walking
Well,
wise?
right through Central Park, so it's great. The office is 54th and 6th, and right in the heart of it, which I really love. All the big law firms, a lot of the money management. Neuberger Berman is right there. Gosh, I'm trying to think across the street. Well, just name any large money manager.
Right.
All the
Yeah.
banks, Societe Generale, Mizuho Securities, Morgan Stanley. I mean, on and on and on. Sullivan and Cromwell, right? I mean, everybody's right there. And so to be right there on 6th Avenue in the thick of it, I love that. I love getting up in the morning and putting on I took my tie off for a podcast, but I put on a tie every day, and it's like your armor, right? And I walk
Hmm.
through the park, and doing the walk and talk helps me get my head in the game. It also brings people to the bullseyebrief.com website, and they sign up, for a 45-day trial, and all of a sudden, then it's up to me to win them over, because I put a new stock pick out every week. It's a ton of work.
Okay.
I do love it, and I love being in the game.
Yeah, it's really good. Those are good. I enjoy watching those. And then you're talking about New York, having lived the way you grew up. You mentioned your dad and so forth. And just from the other side, when I was talking to you earlier about how my wife and I played for the Jets. I went and played for the Jets for a few years in the early
Really cool.
'90s, and being from SoCal, which is where we live here, it was an incredible culture shock to go into New York. Just the people were they're just direct to the point, hey, this is how it is, what kind of sandwich you want, I mean, what do you want? What do you want?
You want?
You got to be quick. You got to be quick to go. If not, they're like, hey, move on. This guy can't make a decision. So it's pretty intimidating from the outside, but so that would had to be a big advantage for you to having grown up and, lived in the area. But boy, I sure love that place. Once you get used to it, it is an incredible place to live. No question
So
about it.
that's so true, Mark. And
Yeah.
whenever I go away on vacation, I don't care where it is. A few years ago, I went to Vietnam right before COVID. It was amazing. It was such an eye opening experience. Um, or skiing in Colorado, or I have clients in Dubai, so I'll go visit them in Dubai. So some really neat places to go. But that morning when I get up and I'm going home, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
You know, just,
That's great.
we're going back to New York. I
Yep,
mean,
going back.
it's the capital of the universe. I love it. Yeah, so it's the best for me.
Definitely.
Not for
Yeah.
everybody. It's right for
I
me.
love
That's
that. I learned to love it. It was really fun, and
yeah.
I missed that part. It's fun to go back. And last time I
Oh,
went back, actually, Jason, his wife is my third daughter, so she was born right when we were in New York. But anyway,
well,
back, just those times where we've gone back and visited, I just tell them, look at when they're
yeah,
harsh, when they're direct to you, just be direct back, and they'll be your best friends for the rest of your life. And that's where
yeah,
we've had long-term relationships there because you just gotta get in and be a part of it. It's fun.
yeah.
So yeah.
Well said.
And I had no idea who Mark was. And my family's from New York. So my dad's side's from Brooklyn, Bay Ridge area in Brooklyn. And my mom's from Levittown on Long Island. So,
Oh,
and then my dad used to run the Waldorf Astoria, the Carlisle, and
really?
Ian Schrager
Wow.
hotels back in the 90s.
Oh boy,
And
that's
yeah, so I used to spend a lot of time. I think it was the St. Moritz condominiums, which was on 6th and Central Park South. I forget exactly, but I think it became the Ritz Carlton now.
that's
Um,
correct. Yeah.
yep.
I walk
So,
by every day. Yeah.
yep, exactly. So very fond. A lot of family there still. So maybe next time
Yeah,
we'll have
we'll
to
have to
meet
hook
up
up with
for
you.
a meal or something next time we come out.
That'd be,
Our treat, of course. But anyway, back to your story. So 1988, right, was your first year kind of on Wall Street. You were at Merrill Lynch as an
yeah.
analyst, correct? That's where you started there.
Yeah. Mortgage-backed securities.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So
My senior
was
my
that
senior thesis at Princeton was creating a beta for an index, right, for
mhm,
mortgage-backed securities. And ironically, the conclusion of my own research was that risk and reward were out of sync, and that mortgage backs didn't really work over the long haul. And how ironic that I ended up working. I didn't even follow my own advice. I went to Merrill Lynch, joined their commercial mortgage-backed securities group. They laid me off in 9 months because they couldn't write enough mortgage-backed securities. I got rehired by another group, um, and then mortgage-backed securities ended up blowing up, the world in 2008. I
mhm.
mean, it's just so funny. That was my first job. Yeah, was and my thesis, I guess, was right.
Yeah.
They
Yeah, it
didn't work
was.
because
Yeah.
you can't
Wow.
model prepayment risk. When when rates go down and people refinance, they just
Mhm.
what you thought was cash flow from the bond, all these people paying their mortgages suddenly doesn't exist because they prepay their mortgages since they're going to refinance at lower rates. So
Yeah.
that was the thing about mortgages and mortgage-backed securities.
So in your time in New York City, I mean, that's again the epicenter. I mean, you dealt with 9/11, the dot-com bubble,
Yep.
2008, and then even all the way up to COVID. So during your time, is there anything that you would tell yourself when you first got in that you've learned through those hard times? I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, again, being the epicenter, the financial epicenter of the world, and going through those times, was there anything that you learned specifically?
Yeah, stick with it. Probably no different, Mark, from your sticking with it in football, right?
Yeah.
From little league to junior high to high school to college to pros, the sacrifice that I'm sure you had to make along the way to keep going to the next step. I mean, to play in the pros for as long as you did. Yeah, I can't even imagine the sacrifices you made, and stick with it. And I would say yes, Jason, sticking with it. And by the way, that includes sticking with New York. I am
Mhm.
so sick and tired of over the years having heard people say, "Well, that's it. It's all over for New York." No, it's not all over for New
Mm.
York. That's capital. People said that back in 9/11. Oh my gosh, this is it. We'll never recover from this. And of course we did. They said that in '08, in the housing crisis. Oh no, New York is toast. They said it in COVID. Oh yeah, people will never come back. Oh yeah, well, go to the restaurants now. And
Yeah.
and and of course they're saying it about commercial real estate. Oh, no one's ever going to go back to an office. Please give me a break. It's just the
Yeah.
naysayer. And you see that in the stock market too, where people say, "Oh, this company's awful," and the shorts jump all over it, and then suddenly, a quarter or two later, it's not so awful anymore. So
Mhm.
I am an eternal optimist. I think that's a healthy way to live your life. I think
Yep.
it's also a much more productive way to be a long-term growth investor, which is what I am. I mean, that's
Amen.
American ingenuity, right? So
Yep.
yes, to answer your question in a long-winded way, stick with it.
Yeah, perseverance. You're right. Dead on, man. Perseverance. You have to have that to really succeed in life. Because sometimes it's not easy, and you got to dig down and go. But there are times though when, and I'd like to hear from you, like
Yeah.
when you have to make some slight adjustments or
Oh, yeah.
things that change. Maybe circumstances change or whatever. How do you navigate those, Adam, to where yeah, you were thinking this, but maybe it's changed. When do you make that that slight adjustment or to continue to move the chains? Any examples of that where you've had to
Yeah,
do that?
I'll give you some personal examples, but also to just frame it. I think the greatest change up any of us has ever seen, those of us who love to watch football, and I'm an Alabama fan. I love Nick Saban. But right, I mean, several years ago when Nick Saban basically benched Jalen Hurts at halftime in
That
the
was
in the
amazing.
national championship game to bring in
Right?
Tua Tagovailoa. I
Great
mean,
example.
wow. But guess what? Jalen Hurts was having a bad day.
Yeah.
And so they switched, and he had just ironically won the national championship the year before. But Nick
True.
Saban had the vision and the guts to pull Jalen, bench him, put Tua Tagovailoa in, who had a great second half, and suddenly Alabama wins 2 years in a row. And then amazing, wow, loyalty. The next year, Tua gets hurt, and Jalen goes back in and does a great job and takes him to the
Amazing.
national championship again. So
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of my own having to change it up and make the hard decision, so the past 2 years have been very hard for anyone who owns stocks and or bonds. It's
And
been
bonds. Yeah.
especially hard for growth investors like me. I've had some very strong years, up significant double digits. As you can't talk about performance, and you can't cite specific numbers per FINRA specifications.
Right.
So we'll just leave it at that. But I've had some
Yeah.
very good years, and then over the past year, it was really hard, and I was down a lot, and I would have been down even more had I not pivoted in the
Mm,
middle of the year, and that was really hard to do. And I think that's what you're getting at. So.
right.
Mm.
I had to sell at a loss, a big loss. And I put my own money where my mouth is, right? It's not just client money, it's my money too. So I had to sell at a
Mhm.
loss. Um, some wonderful, wonderful little growthy stocks that nobody cared about because they
Mhm.
weren't making money yet. And so, if you're not making money and rates are going up, that's a death knell, for two reasons. Because you're probably a money consuming company. You need to go out and do more financings, higher rates. That means your cost of capital went up. And more importantly, number two, those future earnings that we're all looking for have to get discounted back to the present at a higher
Right.
rate when rates
Hmm.
go up, and that means you're willing to pay less for the stock today.
Mhm.
So it was a double whammy. It was crushing so many of these wonderful little stocks that again nobody cared about. So I sold them. I sold them at a loss, and eventually, what I did is I rotated higher up onto the quality curve, and I started buying. I already owned the big obvious ones, the Magnificent Seven, the Microsofts,
Yeah.
Googles, Apples, etc.
Mhm.
But what I started doing was buying the sort of next group down, Salesforce.com, Palo Alto Software, other
Mm,
big chunky companies that I thought would rebound. That may one day be the next Googles and the next Facebooks.
Mhm.
So that for me was a shift higher up on the quality curve. I also did something I've never done before, which was I added a handful of what I call normalization stocks that were all down. Bank America trading at 8/10 of book value. I don't really think of Bank America as an American ingenuity play, but guess
Right.
what? At 8 times
definitely.
or at 8/10 of book value, and the way they run their loan books and manage risk, It's actually an ingeniously run bank. So guess what?
Mhm.
That's going in there. Um, and so I added some of these other names. Delta Airlines. You wouldn't ordinarily think of Delta Airlines as an American ingenuity story. Well, Mark, Jason, actually, if you don't know it, let me tell you why it is. They have figured out how to segment the cabin into 35 different price points. It's not
Mm.
just first class, business class, premium, and economy. It's, do you want an aisle? Do you want a window? It's, do you want to reserve your seat now? Do you not? Do you want to carry another
Mm.
bag? How far out in advance do you want to go? Are you going to apply points or are you not going to apply points? It's also the fact that 10% of their revenues come from cargo, the belly of the plane. Is very active for Delta Airlines. They service parts and service, not only their own planes, but other airlines. So they have a
Mm.
third party maintenance business. And what two other things they do that I think is ingenious. They basically make $1 billion every year from Amex by just selling surplus seats so that Amex can give those seats as
Oh,
rewards to Amex
Mm.
customers. And then the other thing that Delta does is they own a refinery in Philadelphia. Hate to say that, Philadelphia Eagles, Jets, but
it's okay. It's all right.
right outside Philly, actually very near the stadium, they own this refinery, and that's their hedge for jet fuel. So guess what? Delta Airlines, an ingenious company, that there's so much that they do that defines American ingenuity. Guess what? Delta Airlines is in the American ingenuity portfolio. So I, I had to pivot higher on the quality
Yeah.
curve, and I also introduced some less risky, little more predictable cash flow type companies, and that was certainly something that really changed the way I think about the portfolio um, in the past year as a result of rising rates. Because I will tell you right off the bat, I didn't think that rates would ever have the impact on all assets,
Yeah.
stocks, bonds, everything
Yeah.
else. I never thought that rising rates would have such an impact, but they did. And
You
I
did.
mean, last year, right, first time in what was it, 55 years or something, that
Yeah.
stocks and bonds went down together, right?
Yeah.
To that extent, So anyway,
Just
we
destroyed the 60-40 idea or 70-30, right? Just the balanced portfolio got wiped out last year. It
that's
was
right.
crazy. But thanks
Yeah.
for that. The reason I asked, I mean, that question is, perseverance is so important, right? I mean, it's important for us to hang in there. But there are times then where you have to pivot. And I love that word pivot. And you got to change maybe your direction just based on circumstances or whatever's going on. And the other thing I would guess is that you're not making those decisions just on your own. I'm sure you have a team of people that you get wisdom from other counselors, people that are work with you that you guys have kind of decided. Correct? Is that right? As you make those decisions, yeah. So important
So,
for just talking about our guests. Sometimes make sure you get counsel and think through people that are maybe even. I don't know if anybody's smarter than you, Adam, but maybe there's some people
there
around you
are
that are pretty smart too that
there
you glean
are
some
people
insight to from
smarter.
and making those pivots. You know what I mean? So sometimes
Yeah,
that's important. I guess that's the
yeah.
point there. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell you, 1 + 1 = 3, right?
Yeah.
Um, you put two smart people in a room together, and chances are they're going to come up with something that neither one of them would have come up with on his or her own. And that's the notion of teamwork, and 1 + 1 = 3. I'm fortunate
Yeah.
enough to have a couple of partners in California, where you guys are,
Yep.
um,
Really? Wow.
in the Long Beach area. Yep.
Long
Um,
Beach.
Hour
Okay.
yeah.
from us, 45 minutes from us. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so just being able to talk to those guys, or even when new clients potentially want to come in, to just um, um, have have the depth and the expertise. Simple thing like someone else answering the phone and saying, well, I'm sure Adam would love to speak with you. Are you available tomorrow at 10? He's in meetings right now, right? Because I can't do everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something as simple as that, or all the paperwork of setting up new accounts, or talking to my partners and saying, hey, I'm thinking about adding XYZ to the portfolio. Am I crazy? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all that stuff. 1 + 1 = 3. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. It's good.
That I definitely think, especially for us, again, pivoting this last year and a half or so, again, with the rates increasing at the rate that they did, and seeing the bond market and how that reacted, and having to explain that to clients, like, well, I mean, I know a lot of people that, again, maybe not weren't our clients, but specifically that you hear about that weren't able to retire because they
Ugh.
maybe didn't pivot before, or again, like the 60/40 portfolio went out the window. Um, but again, I think it's something that Mark and I have talked a lot about. So we love growth companies. It, again, depends on the client, the goals, income needs, all that. But I think for us, we love the dividend growth sector as well, which so a lot of those big tech companies can start slotting into. Microsoft, even Apple started to pay a dividend. But Bank of America, Home Depot, whoever it may be, um, there's been some opportunities for us, again, having to make the hard choices. Like maybe there's some growth companies that we loved prior to, and then when rates rose like they did, maybe we had to pivot a little bit, and then having to explain that to clients is, it's not always easy. But again, life's not easy. I think that's something that we've had to talk about here.
Yeah. Oh,
I think that's
absolutely.
part of the. I think that's part of the perseverance too, because it's perseverance. You hang in there, but even you hang in there with making little adjustments along the way that helps you to continue to hang in there. But you've got to be smart at times, right? To adjust the game plan or whatever to keep moving forward. So I love
You
hearing
do.
that about Adam, because that's exactly what he's talking about. What
Yeah.
they had to do at that time. It's really,
Well, and
yeah.
and and so I'll give you another way that I try to kind of bracket risk and stay focused. Um, One of my mentors of many years made a comment way back when. He said, "You're only rational once, and it's before you buy the stock." Because right, once you own the stock, you fall in love, um,
True.
right? And you make excuses for it. Ah, well, it's only one quarter, and no,
Yep.
maybe no. Um, so, so he said, set a price target before you buy the stock. What do you expect will happen? What do you think will happen? Where could it go? And also set a target on the downside, which inevitably for me is, somewhere around down 30, 35%. I mean, if I buy a stock at 100 and it drops to 65, I got to say, "Yeah, this is not working. I'm down 35%. Is
Yeah.
is there something wrong with the company? Is there something wrong with the market, the sector? Is something changed, or is this just volatility?" And so, at that downward alert, I'll either cut it or I'll look good and hard and say, no, I think I actually am going to hold it. I might even buy just a tad more.
Yeah.
But having those downside alerts, it forces you to be honest with yourself. Number one. And then number two, having the upside target ensures that whenever one of my stocks hits its target, I always, and I mean always, sell
Mm.
half.
Mm.
It
Mm.
did what it was supposed to do. Now,
Yep.
I'm buying stocks where my goal is to typically double or triple the investment over a 2, 3, 4 year period. So if I buy a stock at 100, chances are I've run the numbers and I figured out why, or I think it can go to 275 or 300, right? So,
Yeah.
it's a practically triple, and it may take 3 years. Fine.
Yeah.
Um, um, if it goes there, I will sell half. And think about it. You say, oh my gosh, you're selling your winner. Well, if I tripled my money on a stock, and by the way, if you have a portfolio of 35 stocks and they're weighted 2 to 4% of capital at
Hmm.
cost,
Yep.
the 3% stock that you bought has tripled. It's now in theory 9%, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um, and so you should be selling it because it's now 9% of your portfolio. That's too much.
Right.
So you should sell half, take it down to 4.5. It's still more than you had when you bought it initially. So
Right.
it's not as if you hate it. But
Hmm.
you take that money off the table and then you can go put it into something else, which is why I like to have the Bullseye Brief newsletter looking at a new pick every week so that there's always this pool of potential names that I can put into um, the actual managed account portfolio.
Yeah. So I got to ask this question, Adam, because I know Mark and I dealt with this, especially during the post-COVID rally, right, where stocks just went screaming through the roof. As
Yeah.
somebody like yourself who does the thoughtful, actionable research, bottom up analysis of the companies. You're looking at all different things. We talked about earlier, the different facets of how you pick a company.
Mm-hmm.
Did it ever bother you? It bothered me when you'd have everyone and their mother thinking they're stock pickers back then, because I mean, at that point, after that, the March collapse or 35% or whatever it went down, all of a sudden the market screamed back, 200-300% if you're in those big tech stocks, the NASDAQ. Did you ever have that feeling where people be like, oh, like I made so much money on this. Oh, I'm such a good stock picker. I feel like everyone became stock pickers after that. So I actually really appreciate the tough times, because then everyone goes, well, you know what? Maybe I actually didn't know what I was talking about. So I need people like Adam. I need people like, John, the advisor down the street, whoever it is. Did you ever get that kind of feeling? Or
Well, I'm going to say yes, but I resist the temptation to go there.
yeah,
God bless. If you can, coming out of a horrible downdraft for the market and the economy, if you can actually have the guts to put money at work, whether you're lucky or you're smart and you make money, God bless.
yeah, yeah.
God bless you.
Good
That's
point.
wonderful. I'm thrilled that you made money. What I think people find over time is that it's really hard to do. And yes, if you do the work and you're smart and you're disciplined and you're a little bit lucky, you can outperform. I mean, I've outperformed. I've proven that, and again, it's a lot of work, and that's where I think active management, where active managers like us actually we earn our keep, because we
Yes.
can say it wasn't just this one golden 6-month period where I did really well, but actually, look at the past 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, whatever it's been.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever your story is, it might be that you outperform. It might be that you equal perform, but you have significantly less volatility. Great. That's a story to tell too. In my case, I'm volatile, but I do outperform, typically significantly on the upside when I have the wind at my back. I would never begrudge anyone for having done really well and even talked about it. It's okay. Nothing wrong with patting yourself on the back and saying, yeah, I did well there. I mean, guys spike the ball when they score. I mean, enjoy
Yeah.
the moment, you know?
I think Mark got ultra excited over there when you mentioned active management. We talk about that all the
Oh,
time. We're
yeah,
really big on that. So
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So
When you
let's
get,
talk. Oh, go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
well, I was gonna say, I think that's really important, and he makes some great points there. I think back, Jason, you're too young, but Adam and I both went through the late '90s and that the .com thing, right? When everybody was a genius until they weren't.
Yeah.
Right? That was
Oh, yeah.
unbelievable. So that
I'll
was
never
cool.
forget, Mark. I was in a cab. I was going to this great little Italian place. It doesn't exist anymore, called Vico. It was on Madison between 90th and 91st. And so I'm in the cab, and of course back then it was all cash. It wasn't like
Yeah,
you.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
some
You know what
credit
cash is, Jason?
cabs taking credit cards was a
No,
new thing.
can't carry any.
Concept now you do your phone, but yeah, it was cash. And you gave the guy a 20, he'd look at you like, oh, you only have 20s. But I remember the guy said, you got to buy some Yahoo. The
Oh
cab
my.
is telling me you got to buy Yahoo. Oh, really? Oh, great. I mean, that was no joke. Within 3 weeks of the top, and then everything
Yeah.
just got crushed. Yeah.
I got a fun story with that one too. Same thing. About 3 weeks before the crash, I went to my mom and dad's house for dinner. My wife and I, she invited us over. So my mom's at the time 75, and she knows nothing about stocks. But I was helping her with some of her, just a small IRA or whatever. And she says, Mark, a guy at church is saying that I need to be buying, and she named off a couple of names. I'm like, she has no idea what those companies even do.
Right.
And anyway, I said, Mom, you're good. And anyway, long story, we walk out. I told my wife, I said, I think we're at the top of the market, because even my mom's talking about buying stocks. And, it's like, it's just, that was just, and it was just like you said, you're same guy. You can't follow the crowd. It's important to have active managers that are really researching these companies and know what
Yep.
they're doing and live through the hard times too. It's really So that's why it's important to have good people around you that know what they're doing and have some experience that you can get
That's for sure.
information from, and other teammates that can kind of help you be successful. So important.
Yes, 100%.
So let's talk American Ingenuity, your forte here. So looking forward, let's say 2020s, since we're in the 2020 era right now, decade. Thoughts on kind of the big industries that maybe you're looking at. Again, I don't want to like give away your bullseye brief picks. Again, not what I'm trying to do, but just something that maybe you're looking at kind of 5-10 years down the road, whether it be AI, chips, robotics, healthcare. Would love your insight on that.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you right off the bat, one of the things that hasn't worked, and I've had to cut it, clean energy. It's been a disaster.
Mm.
Uh, just nothing from ChargePoint to Sonova to, just on and on. So interestingly, while clean energy is something that should fit the American Ingenuity
Yeah.
orientation brilliantly, right? American Ingenuity, the people, companies, and technologies driving the world forward. That's how I
Yep.
define it.
Mhm.
But clean energy hasn't worked. I'll tell you what is working, and this should not come as a surprise. Logistics, right? As the world has pivoted to e-commerce,
Yeah.
as companies have decided to go asset light, and they contract out to third party service providers. If you're Nike, you don't want to manage your own warehouse. You let people who manage warehouses manage your warehouse. In fact, they handle all the shipping and everything and returns and everything else. You subcontract. So
Yeah.
logistics has become huge. Tied into logistics is automation, because a lot of these new warehouses actually are, if not fully automated, partially automated. So that has been an exciting convergence and will continue to be a very important theme. And I could give you a number of stocks, but I can't give it all away.
No,
So
not
No, we don't want it.
logistics, robotics, automation, computing power, um, artificial intelligence creates a significant need for more computing power. I mean, NVIDIA's chips are capable of 30 trillion calculations per second.
oh my
And to
gosh.
run a
Amazing.
powerful AI platform, you need multiple chips. They're
Yeah.
doing that many calculations. I mean, it's really something else.
It's
And
crazy.
so there are a number of different ways to play. I hate to say play. That sounds kind of, what's the word? Cavalier.
Mhm.
I'm going to play computing power, but no, I'm going to invest in computing power. I'm going to express a view that we need more computing power in the portfolio. I want to
Mhm.
leverage that theme, which is an important concept. The same mentor that I talked about, who said, set a target before you buy the stock while you're still rational,
Mhm.
used to ask a question, single question for every person he interviewed. And the question was, how do you make the most amount of money on Wall Street? And the answer that got you the job was find a theme and leverage it. So,
Mm.
that's
Mm.
what we're talking about. These
Yep.
themes that then allow me to go out and find a specific stock that will leverage that theme, that will express that view, whether it's NVIDIA in artificial intelligence. I'm giving you a few names now, whether it's Symbotic, ticker SYM, in automated warehouses. In fact, Symbotic has a contract to automate all of Walmart's 47 distribution facilities around the country. And what
Wow.
they do, robots would blow your mind. A truck pulls in, a robot goes in and pulls the pallets off. A robot takes all the shrink wrap off. A robot breaks apart the pallets. A robot puts all these things onto the shelf. A robot retrieves them. A robot puts together the new pallet. A robot balances it. These are all different robots. I mean,
Yeah.
it's mind-boggling. And
Man.
I've been to some of these warehouses. It's beautiful. It's ballet. It's
Yeah.
robotic ballet. Um,
Wow.
and that's a big business. Their backlog, by the way, they're going to do $1 billion in sales this year, and their backlog is 11 billion. So they have 11 years worth of sales
Wow.
already in backlog, which is why they are ramping up and creating basically 3 different simultaneous production lines, so that they can service 11 years in 3 years, right? Because they'll have 3
Yeah.
times. Anyway, companies like that. So if you believe that the intersection of e-commerce, third-party asset-light business models make sense, and robotics and automation streamline productivity, then you would naturally want to find companies that bring all that together. And Symbotic is a great example of a company that does exactly that. If you want to make the statement that artificial intelligence is something that's propelling the world forward, you would certainly want to own NVIDIA among
Hmm.
certainly many other chip-related companies, or even a company like Excelis, ticker ACLS, that embeds silicon wafers with ions, and that's how you basically make chips. And now there is significantly more need for the ability to embed silicon with ions because we need more chips and they have to be more dense. And there's only one company that's better at every other than every other company in the world at doing that. It's called Excelis.
Hmm.
Wow.
Right? There are ways to um, leverage these themes, and we do that as stock pickers by finding these uniquely positioned companies and then comparing to all their competitors and running the numbers and who does it best, and maybe even talk to some of the customers, and that's the work. People
Yeah.
talk about, well, have you done the work on it? Yes, I've done the work. Right, this is
Yeah.
doing the work.
Yeah.
you know?
So, do you think part of your ingenuity story, or the ingenuity story that you're looking at, is the deglobalization of supply chains? Do you see that kind of impacting innovation and growth as well? I mean, look, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but Mexico's our biggest trade partner right now, right? So
Mhm.
maybe bringing factories back, whether it's maybe not stateside in the U.S. yet, or it's Mexico, it's Canada, whoever it may be. Obviously, we had the USMCA deal that went through a few years ago during the Trump administration. But do you see that kind of playing a part? Because obviously, for us, Taiwan Semi was one of my favorite companies a few years ago, right? World's largest chip foundry, I believe. So obviously with Taiwan and then the China, invading Taiwan piece, people get nervous, and then also just seeing how the supply chain worked during COVID and how it was kind of disrupted and broken. They opened factory in Arizona, but now they're having trouble hiring qualified workers. So they're having the Taiwanese come here to train Americans on how to do it. Do you
Right.
see, again, this is a lot, but do you see that kind of playing into the ingenuity piece as well, kind of, and helping the ingenuity piece?
Yeah, reshoring.
Yeah.
Certainly, that's good for a company like Symbotic.
Hmm.
It's also good for a company like Prologis, the largest PLD is that ticker, the
Yep.
largest warehousing REIT in the world. They
Yeah.
have the equivalent of, Mark, you'll appreciate this, 57,000 football fields worth
Wow.
of warehousing space.
Oh
That's
my God.
insane.
That is insane.
57,000 football
Wow.
fields. Yeah. Um, and so, uh, and by the way, that stock's trading now at like 18 times funds from operation, FFO, which is like the earnings version for REITs, and that's
Yeah.
how you always look at REITs, and has a good healthy yield that probably will get your attention.
Hmm.
And their occupancy, by the way, is 98%, and all the lease renewals that they're negotiating are up 8%. So for all the gloom and doom in commercial real estate, there's a
Yeah.
winning story. It's down because the algos have hit anything that is real estate related. But yeah, that's an interesting name, and one that, Jason, I think gets at what you're talking about, which is reshoring. We need more
Hmm.
space if we're going to reshore manufacturing. We need more warehousing space to store all this stuff before
Yep.
you actually manufacture it. And all that's being done in again, that plays into the third party logistics that I
Yeah.
mentioned. So there's a
Hmm.
convergence. So, you and I, this is what we were talking about: 1 + 1 = 3, or in this case, 1 + 1 + 1 = 4. Because right. So,
Yep.
you and I coming up with these ideas together, and that's part of the process.
Love that.
Adam, getting me a lot more calls or talk, people asking about gold. I think, commodities in general, things like that. When there's any kind of issues around geopolitical issues that happen, people always if you're watching Fox News or whatever, seeing you on TV, but the commercials are all the gold bugs jump out, and you buy
Oh, I
gold, buy
know.
gold. You have some thoughts on that? Anything that you could share wisdom wise in the commodity space and gold in particular?
Yeah, don't waste your time. If
Okay.
the highest inflation in 50 years, if chaos on Capitol Hill, if um, uh, the uncertainty of two presidential frontrunners who may not even get to election day,
Yeah.
one for
Either
health,
one
one
of
for
them.
legal.
Yeah.
Yeah. If two major wars, Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, Gaza, if and by the way, an ongoing inability to create a budget
Yeah.
in this country, if all of these things happening at the same time can't push gold above $2,000 to a new high, why would you ever buy it?
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a great.
Why would you ever buy it? Yeah.
Yeah. Makes no sense. No.
Yeah.
I agree with you. So I wanted to hear from you because that solidifies what we've been talking about, Jason, with some people within our clients. But anyway, it's good. What about bond
Yeah.
market,
Gold
Adam?
is
What do you?
gold. I'm sorry. Gold.
What?
Sorry to Mark.
No,
Gold
no,
is a bet on the end of the world, and guess what?
Mhm.
That trade has never paid off.
yeah.
It's very true. Very true. Very true.
Where do you
Yeah.
think interest rates are headed from here? What are you thinking on that? We've had a little
Lower.
pullback this week. Yeah, lower.
Yeah, lower.
Yeah. You like fixed
Yeah,
income? I mean, yeah.
I think we have conquered inflation. I'm not saying that that it's fully done, but I think we have conquered it. I mean, think about it. Producer prices, the PPI, producer price index, producer prices are now down to about 2.5. At the high, they were 11.7. So
Yeah.
from 11.7 down to 2.5. Consumer prices, CPI, were as high as 9.1. They are now 3.7 and expected to fall to about 3.4 next Tuesday, the 14th. We get that next CPI report. So I think we have conquered inflation. It still is higher than we'd like. CPI,
Mm-hmm.
we really want to sit down around 2%. That's sort of the Fed's target. And we're not there yet. But the Fed hiked rates by 550 basis points, and I think Jerome Powell has correctly said it does take time for all those rate hikes to percolate through the economy, so that's why they're sitting tight. But I do think we've conquered inflation. Interestingly, oil, by the way, is back down to $75 because the
Mhm.
world is reasonably well supplied. That helps. Food inflation has backed way off. It's still going up. I mean, it's disinflating because it's going up, but at a lesser rate.
Yeah.
People understand, the difference between disinflation and deflation. Deflation means prices actually fall. That
Yeah.
very rarely happens. In fact, it usually only happens during recessions and depressions. So you actually don't want prices to go down. You just want them to go up at a lesser rate, which is called
Right.
disinflation. So that is what's happening now, and that's good. Supply chains have normalized. Now, two things need to happen. We need to stop seeing people get raises because that's inflationary by definition. Number one, well, actually, three things. People need to stop getting these crazy raises. I mean, a UPS truck driver makes 180 grand a year. Wow.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wow.
We need to stop seeing that. We need to see home prices correct because housing is 30% of the CPI calculation. So as long as home prices stay high, that keeps rents high and home prices high. So we need to see that back off, even though you kind of hate to see your home worth less. We
Yeah.
actually would be better served by it. And then critically, we need to see some sort of discipline out of Washington. They just keep spending money. It's crazy. I mean, the Intel foundry that's going to be built in Ohio is being built in part with a $3 billion grant from the federal government. Come on, it's Intel. They can
Right.
afford the $3 billion, and yet the government's going to give them a grant for $3 billion. Guess who's paying for that grant? All of us. That's
Yeah.
why we have a deficit. So
Mhm.
the federal government needs to stop spending money. And by the way, both sides of the aisle are guilty. It
Right.
used to be only Democrats were, quote unquote, remember during
Yep.
Reagan, the those tax and spend Dems. Well, actually, the Republicans are doing the same thing.
100%. Yep.
That's because every politician, whatever, shade of, red or blue he or she is, wants to get reelected. And the way to get reelected is just throw money at people, right? So, yeah. So we need to see all those things happen for inflation to keep going down. But I do think we've conquered it, and that means interest rates will go down. By the way, and I know I'm rambling, but I will make this point. If you look at Fed Fund futures on the Bloomberg terminal, what you'll find is that there's only a 10% chance of another rate hike, and yet there is a 100% chance of 2 rate cuts by next June.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not just me saying, "Oh yeah, rates are going down." The market believes that rates are going down from here.
And I think last week you were talking about, again, just on the subject of interest rates. A lot of people look at the 10-year Treasury rate. It was kind of hovering around 5%. Obviously, we've had a 50 basis point drop from that point.
Yep.
But you brought up a really remarkable point, I think, just in terms of looking beyond that at the 30 years. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of rehashing that. I know, again, the markets have had quite a rally over 5% last week. We had a 50 basis point, yield correction kind of. So
yeah,
thoughts on that? I thought that was a really interesting point you made on, I think it was LinkedIn that I saw, or Fox Business, actually. Fox Business, maybe.
Well, thank you. Admittedly, I cannot take credit for that. I was simply repeating what I had heard. This is why it's important to have a pack of traders, investors, analysts, etc., whom you can talk to. Again, 1 + 1 = 3.
Yep.
I'm a long-term investor, all right? But I talk to the very aggressive day traders in Chicago, the Chicago futures trading crowd, because they look at the world very differently. And I want that perspective. And what they told me 3 weeks ago, the guys who, by the way, go back to the 1970s, they were the first rate traders in Chicago. These are the guys who created interest rate futures, right? So you want to listen to what these guys have to say. They've been doing it 50 years. And they said the 30-year needs to hold 5.15, 5.15. I said, why? They said, that's the contract high that goes back to 2007. So even though Fed Chair Jerome Powell had basically said 2 meetings ago, we're going to just sit tight, the futures market needed to probe and not take Chairman Powell at his word. So the futures market probed, it went higher, it went up to 5.15 3 times over about 2 weeks, and that was 2 weeks ago. And the futures traders in Chicago said, that's very good, because the market has taken the 30-year to the contract high, the highest it's ever traded at, going back to 2007, and it held 3 times, and now the futures market can back off. It's comfortable that it has pushed the edge, and it didn't go past it. And so that was a signal to basically cover shorts in the bond market. And within 2 days, by the way, did you see that? I think it was Jeff Gondelot and Bill Ackman, and it might even have been Bill Gross, the bond king from PIMCO. I'm not sure about Bill. But my point is, notable investors who basically said the same thing. And when you see notable investors of very different disciplines, Chicago futures traders and big hedge fund guys and bond traders, all saying the same thing, cover your shorts in the bonds. You need to pay attention. And that allowed stocks to rally. We had a 5% rally in stocks last week. So that was the series of dots. And I can't take credit for having figured that out on my own, Jason. It was just conversations with a lot of people. And that's why you have that pack, and why you have allies, and why you pick up the phone and talk to them.
I love that. I love that.
Good stuff.
All right, so got a few a little. I want to get kind of personal here in terms of some of your passions outside of trading, outside of economics. So you're a Partagas fan, right? So talk to us a little bit.
I'm a what?
What's that? You're a Partagas fan, right?
Partagas. Oh yeah,
yeah,
sure.
Partagas. Yeah, from Cuba, right? So cigar guy.
D
So number 4.
Yeah, Partagas Series D number 4. That is the best cigar ever. I used to buy them from Cuban Lou's before COVID. I'd get a box of 25 for $225, which, I think is,
Yeah.
reasonable, right?
Yep.
$7, $8 a
Good.
cigar, right?
Yep.
No tax, no shipping. Well, cubanlose.com no longer sells them at 220. I mean, they're like double. It's like 450, and I've seen them as high as, because the price moves. It's a market like any other. I've seen them
Inflation.
over $500 for a box. So I don't do that anymore. Now I found a great place, Los Llanos das Palmas, out of Charleston, and
Okay.
they roll these great Churchill cigars. So they're like 7
Mm,
inches,
my favorite.
50
Yeah.
ring gauge, really big, 50, 64 of an
Yeah.
inch. And yeah, 25 is like $150.
Okay.
So that I can
Very
afford.
reasonable.
And so yes, I have more of those than I should, but I'm a very good customer of Llanos das Palmas.
I love it.
Yeah.
And then, so favorite ski spot in Colorado or in the world?
Oh, hands down, Aspen Highlands.
Okay.
Aspen gets all the flash. If you take the bus, 12 minutes down into the valley and then up the hill, you go one ridge line over and you're at Aspen Highlands. It's the best. I think it's the best skiing in the country. And they also have the bowl. And so you take the snowcat, you take the highest lift up,
Uh-huh.
and then you get in a snowcat that takes you another mile up the ridge line. You get out, you put your skis on your back, and you hike in a straight line on a very narrow ridge. It's a little freaky. Sometimes it freaks me out. I just look straight ahead. If you fall, you're
Oh
in a
my
world
goodness.
of hurt.
Yeah.
And you walk up the spine of the ridge, and you get to, I think it's about 14,000 feet, which is
Wow.
freaking high.
Yeah.
And it's, I believe, the highest skiable point in Colorado. Well, Arapahoe Basin, A Basin, is
Yep.
maybe nominally higher, but it's just this one little place where you go at A Basin for that height. When you're on the top of that Aspen Highlands Bowl, I mean, you are just looking out at the world. It's really exciting. And by the way, even if you're a fast skier, it'll take you 40 minutes to get down to the
That's the
lift
best.
at the
Yeah.
bottom of that bowl. It's just so vast.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you look at the far side of the bowl all around the edge, and the people are like that because it's so vast. They're like little ants, I mean, and they're all just going down like that, finding their own lines down. And it's,
Yeah.
I just love that.
Have you done Telluride yet?
Yes. Which I think got its name, I was told, when I was out there, because they used to say, "To hell you ride."
That's
Hell
true.
you ride. Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
Very true. Very true. I used to live up there, so that's obviously close to my heart. I love it, and spent a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
times up there in the back bowl, and it's
Oh,
fun.
great.
So I haven't done Aspen yet. I still want to do Aspen at some point, but have to take your
It's,
word for it.
yeah, Aspen is awesome. I mean, I know it's flashy and, Hollywood celebs and all that, but yeah, get over to Aspen Highlands, and you'll just have a magical experience. By the way, the best restaurant is ski restaurant of anywhere in the world is at Aspen Highlands. It's called Cloud 9. And
Okay.
That's good.
and so it's a party. They have 2 seatings, and you want to get up early that morning and ski hard, because when you walk in there for the 1 o'clock seating, you're done.
You're not going back.
You are going to party, and you are going to party hard. Cloud 9 at Aspen Highlands. And
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
last thing, and then Mark has any questions, but talk to us a little bit about your other passion. You said painting, right? Painting and shooting. So have you always been a painter? You
That's one of
painted
mine.
those? No way.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah.
Wow. Those are
Wow.
beautiful.
No, thanks. Yeah, I love to paint. When I was a kid, I mentioned my madman dad,
Yep.
who was a very creative guy. His hobby was woodworking. He turned the basement of our house in Connecticut into a wood shop. So I grew up in his wood shop, and I kind of fooled around with wood a little bit, but I just strangely, naturally, I don't know how, I just gravitated towards painting. And so when I was a kid, my parents didn't buy us toys. They would just say, "Well, go down to your father's shop," and mom would say, "Go down to your father's shop and get some wood and some string and glue and go make something."
Hmm.
And ditto for my sister. And because mom liked to sew, so my sister learned to do that stuff. And mom was also a great cook. But I just naturally gravitated towards the painting, and so I've literally been painting since I was a kid. And yeah, we didn't have normal toys. We made our own toys, or we got creative.
Well, you're a magnificent painter. I mean, I can see him behind. That's incredible.
That's
You sell those things?
I used to, yeah. Now I just sort of keep them for myself. But yeah, I really enjoy it, and it's very therapeutic, and a good counterbalance for the headiness of running money and the pressure of running money and trying to pick stocks and run spreadsheets and all that. I think it's important to for me anyway to have a creative outlet, and for me that's cooking and painting.
All right, so I like to eat. What do you like to cook? What's your favorite dish? What's your best dish?
Short ribs, braised short ribs, single best dish.
Oh,
Yeah. It's real. You want me to know how? You want to know how to do it? I'll tell you.
Yeah,
It's really easy.
yeah. Real quick, yeah.
Go buy the ribs. The big ribs. It's got the meat wrapped around the rib. Short ribs. You're going to basically put them in a Dutch oven. Which is the big heavy round oven with the heavy top. Creates the pressure. Put them in there with some olive oil. Get the sides real dark real quick. Take them out. Then put onions, carrots, and celery in there. You're going to cook that down. Eventually, you're going to add some tomato paste and some garlic. Stir that up. Then add some flour. That will thicken it up. To that, you're then going to add a bottle of red wine and some chicken stock. And now all of a sudden it's real soupy. And you say, what happened? It was so pasty and great. Now it's like soup.
Yeah.
Fine. You're going to braise, meaning you cook with pressure, heat, a lot of heat, and fluid. That's what braising is. You take those ribs that you browned, put them in that fluidy stuff, put the top on, leave it on the stove for 45 minutes at a very high heat. Okay, take it off, and the fluid will cook down by half. You then put it in the oven at like 350 degrees for 4 to 5 hours. This is the perfect meal to make on a great football Sunday, right? You start that thing at like noon, and it cooks and just fills the house all day with that aroma. And you're watching football, and then at like 5 o'clock, cocktail time, maybe you started before then, and you then what you do is I also will mash some potatoes. Just put little new potatoes, boil them, a little bit of cream, some butter, some Parmesan cheese, stir it real hard. Take a bowl, put the fresh mashed potatoes in the bowl, then reach in, grab one of your braised short ribs, put it on top. At this point, that watery fluid is super thick, like split soup, super thick because it cooked down, and just ladle that over the top. So mashed potatoes, braised short ribs, the brown sauce. That is delish.
That sounds amazing.
Made me
Jason,
hungry.
did you get all that down?
I actually remembered that. Absolutely. We need
All
to
right.
make that.
I want you
I'm coming to your
make
house.
it. Okay.
Yeah, come to your house. We'll make it one day. So go along with that. Favorite restaurant in New York City.
Bilbo Cay, hands down.
Okay.
Although tonight I think I'm going to go get some margaritas with my girlfriend. But
there you go.
A joint. But yeah, Bilbo Cay, 60th. It's a free ad for Bilbo Cay. It's a really cool French place. They do this thing called Cajun chicken. It's a chicken breast with kind of a hot sauce on it, and it comes with a salad and fries. So it's a full meal. It's like $38. And get a glass of rosé. It's French. Everybody's beautiful. The music's great. It's right there in Midtown. They've been such a success. They have one out in Sag Harbor now in the Hamptons. They've got one in Dallas. I think they've got one in Atlanta. They might even have one in Las Vegas. I'm not positive. And I've heard that they are considering opening one in Dubai. Bilbo Cay, Bilboquet. It was started by a French guy and a buddy of mine who's not French. He's Swedish. He was actually the national champion squash player of Sweden back in the day.
Wow.
Yeah. And they started this French restaurant together. and now it's, I mean, oh yeah, and they've got one in Palm Beach too. Bilbo Cay. It's awesome.
Bilbo
Well,
Cay.
Bill, okay. If you're all listening or watching this, go check it out at those different locations. Support Adam's friend. It sounds amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
I go there once a week. Sometimes it's a joke. It's New York. Everybody eats out, you know.
Yeah.
exactly. Mark, any other questions for Adam before we let him go enjoy time with his
No, I think
girlfriend?
I think we covered a lot, and I appreciate your time, Adam. So you spend a good amount of time here with us, and wow, what a treasure chest of wisdom and
Yep.
thoughts provoking and things. I mean, I'm just, what I heard was, lots of things. I mean, in regards to stick with what your giftings are. You were fortunate years ago at Princeton that, a professor cared enough to tell you the truth. And it's good to
Yes.
have people like that in our lives, right? To say, hey, you should be in economics, and you adjusted quickly. I mean, it was thought maybe that might be because you wanted to be maybe a surgeon or whatever, but man, you adjusted quickly, which makes sense because now you do that now. I mean, where you have to adjust, like to the point. There's perseverance. You've hung in there through your career,
Yeah.
but then with people around you, gaining wisdom, asking questions. There's just comes a time where you maybe need to persevere longer term. Hey, I got to make an adjustment here, and you did that recently, and it's just a lot of good insights. Those are some of the key things that I heard
Oh,
today in
thank you.
regards to moving the chains forward. And I think that's just really good wisdom. What about you, Jason? What did you hear?
Absolutely. Perseverance is key. I think you kind of wrapped it up great, but Adam, I think your story is inspiring. Again, I think
Yeah.
a lot of people, especially, so I'm 33, so I'm still, I mean, I think I'm old, but I guess I'm still young on the
You are not
spectrum.
old.
No,
You're
But
not old.
I just remember, graduating college, and I was a sociology major in college. I didn't know what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be. I know I loved people. I loved serving people. I loved, again, growing up in that, restaurants and hotel hospitality type of world. But I really didn't know what that meant at the time. Again,
sure.
having people in your life that are going to push you, and utilizing the unique background, the Mad Men background that you had, or the background I had, or Mark had, kind of forms you into who you are, and develops that character within you. And then obviously God-given talent. I mean, obviously you're very talented in multiple things besides the pictures behind. Geez,
Very
wish
kind.
I could draw like that or paint like that. But
Multi-talent.
but yeah, I think that's the thing, is like, is you were adaptable, you persevered, but you were adaptable as well. I mean, analyst, options trader, oil, futures, equities. I mean, you've kind of done it all. So again, I think your story is inspiring, and we really appreciate you taking the time where you didn't have to do that. So, Adam, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We appreciate it.
Oh gosh. Well, thank you. I'm humbled, and just I'm so glad that we were able to be together. So thank you.
Good time.
Absolutely, and we'll link the Bullseye Brief website, your bio. We'll link that stuff in the episode information there. But Adam, anything else you want to leave the audience with here today? I know you're an eternal optimist, so give us like a good quote or something, to take with us as we finish out the week here.
Keep going.
I love that.
Quit.
Well, wherever you're going, keep going.
Yeah.
Never give up. Tomorrow's going to be better than today. I know we've been talking football, but you know, Wayne Gretzky, don't skate to where the puck is, skate to where it's going. Think about where you want to go. Think about who
Yeah.
you want to be. Think about the people that matter in your life. Prioritize all of that, and just keep going.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
That was
Thanks for
perfect.
helping us. Thanks for helping us move the chains, Adam.
Oh,
Blessing
love
to
it.
have you on.
Hopefully, we move the chains today.